Good morning and welcome to the 2023 Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Grantee Conference. I am Tecia Sellers, in case those of you who are looking for me, a federal project officer, and I'm honored to welcome you today. It has been 4 years since we've all gathered in person, and I hope you are looking forward to this experience as much as the entire team from the Administration on Children, Youth, and Families. We are going to start with a tribal opening to begin our time today. Over 6,000 American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian residents call Atlanta home, so it's only right that we pay our respects. In 2017, the Atlanta Indigenous Peoples Association was founded to provide support for Atlanta's American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian residents. Through the organization, they hope to increase visibility for Atlanta's Indigenous population, grow awareness of resources available to Indigenous peoples, especially Indigenous youth, and create opportunities to educate the broader Atlanta population about the diversity of Indigenous people. Please join me in welcoming the Atlanta Indigenous Peoples Association.
Ochtinkalolo, Wida Shagonin, Uktunu Jalish, Laura Cummings Bulgari, Inuish, Vihidi Mana, Nachi Anwalt, Tan Hijisha, Nachi Hiwit Lagik, Oshko Agish, Hanan, Wihi Muskogi, Manachalagi Shataku. Hinle Leha, Lish, Tamshil, Mana Ujashki, Mana Tamshil, Taluin Washta, Jam Hashilosh, Kinlenu, Unlet. Netakisha Shokon Shelkoyokop Kawita. Greetings. My name is Laura Cummings Bulgari, and I'm here to welcome you to Atlanta. I'm from the Pedi and Nachi tribes, and I'm the co-director of the Atlanta Indigenous Peoples Association. I'm welcoming you this morning in the Nachi or Natchez language. We're gathered here on the traditional homeland of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and to the north of us are the Cherokee, as well as remnant Nachi or Natchez. We honor the ancestors today and these tribal nations, and we hold the sacred land affectionately and pray for the Creator's blessings on all of us today. Atlanta Indigenous Peoples Association is a local community network of Indigenous residents from numerous tribes. Although many of the original Muskogee Creek and Cherokee inhabitants of the Atlanta area now live in Oklahoma, the Atlanta area is home to approximately 6,000 Indigenous people of various backgrounds. Due to the efforts of diaspora, to the effects of diaspora and colonization, many Native people from all over this hemisphere find themselves here in the largest city in the Southeast. In fact, 70% of Native Americans live in the metropolitan areas, often alone and without any cultural or social support. AIPA was created in 2017 by a group of Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, and Lakota students to bring isolated Native and Indigenous people together for social networking and solidarity. It can be very lonely to be the largest minority in the country, which we once called Turtle Island. AIPA seeks to dispel that loneliness by hosting coffee house meetups, traditional powwow dance lessons, group outings to traditional events such as lacrosse games, travel powwows, and social support. Additionally, we provide education to schools, universities, and local media and news outlets, and act as a resource and a liaison between the Native and non-Native communities for job opportunities and cultural correspondence. Another intertribal organization we're proud to work with is called Pine Hill Health Network, based out of our neighboring state of South Carolina. Pine Hill Health Network offers an array of health services specifically tailored to Indigenous needs, such as diabetes prevention, nicotine cessation programs, cancer talking circles, teen talk support group, a stay in your lane dating violence awareness group, and Indigenous First Steps maternal pediatric program. For myriad reasons, Native American teens have the highest teen birth rate of any U.S. group, and 4 out of 10 Native American women begin childbearing in adolescence, according to a Johns Hopkins study. Because of the systemic destruction of our culture and family structures over the past 400 years, it is no surprise that there have been few protective measures for our tribal adolescents. We are the first generation out of the wholesale adoptions and enforced boarding schools, which ended only about 30 years ago. Yet on our reservations, we still experience exploitation of our young women without repercussions. This month, on May 5th, we recognize the ongoing epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and the legal loopholes in the U.S. justice system that allow for Indigenous women to experience sexual assault at twice the rate of other groups. However, we know that culture heals. In revitalizing our culture and bringing back our languages, tribal values, and traditions, our mission is to spread healing to our people as well as the rest of the world. It is our honor to showcase and share a little bit of our culture with you today. I hope you enjoy seeing how we strengthen our community bonds and our commitment to personal and communal health. First up, we will have Mr. Joey Jordan of the Meherrin tribe giving a historical introduction with the hand drum. The drum is the heartbeat of our culture and a call to spiritual and mental balance. With him, we will have Ms. Winona of the Meherrin tribes, as well as the Lower Brule Sioux and Omaha tribes. And after that, we will see Ms. Emily Coggin from the Chickasaw Nation, our youngest youth fancy dancer. She's choreographed her own dance that she will perform for us today. Lastly, we'll dance to an intertribal song, and I will showcase the women's traditional Southern cloth along with Ms. Winona. Mado, and thank you for your service to public health.
Chwant, Netneru, Skinny Joseph Jordan Gaston, Tawistawi Seseki, Gawachaga Tiwagaf Nutni, Miami Nagarakwe, Eastney, Disney, Atlanta, Georgia, Tiwag Nene. Hello, my name is Joseph Jordan. I come from the Meherrin Nation of the Snipe clan. I was raised in South Miami. Now I live here in Atlanta. Appreciate y'all giving us the opportunity to come here and talk and display a little bit about our culture and all within the Atlanta area. Atlanta is a big city. Anywhere you have a big city, you have a lot of Native Americans, and this is 2023. We come many color shades and sizes. You know, we've been dealing with 300 years of you know, change and mixing, and we're still here today. We're still here today because you know, in our minds we say we're still Native. It doesn't matter how much blood Native you are. It's about being who you are and being proud of it. Understanding your culture, learning about your culture, teaching about your culture. That's what makes you 100. You know, that makes you connected. Back in the day, they say people had more connection to life, connection to Mother Earth. They talk about people being able to talk to animals, and that was because they had more of a connection. You know, and these days we live in a world where we have cars and skyscrapers and real big hotels with lights that you can't hardly see. But you know, then we just had to step outside and go out in the mountains or out in the woods and stuff, and you know, get connected for a little bit, and it always helps. You know, back in the days, we say we wear moccasins. You know, a lot of natives wear moccasins, or grandma or grandpa used to say, hey, you're barefooted, go barefooted, because your feet, you know, as a man, we don't have that monthly time to release our toxins and all. So we have a ceremony that we go to a sweat ceremony or a nipi ceremony or so for a man could release his toxins. It's a purification ceremony where within the connection, if you were young and you ran barefooted and you're in that grass and the weeds and all this and that, that's actually medicine. And your body's connected to the ground through your feet with that medicine. And all, so it cleanses you and it heals you. But we're here in the state of Georgia, and we're in the land of what's called the Kilegi or Kaliji Creeks. A lot of people know Cherokee and a lot of people know Creek, but Creek was just a confederacy. It was a confederacy of many different tribes that made it up. The first treaty in the state of Georgia was in Savannah, Georgia. And when you go down there, you'll see postcards with a chief and his son and an eagle sitting in his hands. And that was a chief called Tamachichi. And Chief Tamachichi, he was Yamacraw, a Yamacraw Indian from down in Savannah. And that was the very first treaties set in here in the state of Georgia. And right across the river, you got the Yamasee, and they're just pretty much the same people, Yamasee and Yamacraw. When you go across the state of Georgia, you go down to Macon, they had what was considered the capital of the Creek Nation or the Creek Confederacy, and that's Okmulgee. You could go there today and they have real big mounds, the Indian mounds down there, and that was the capital for the Confederacy of the Creeks before the Trail of Tears. And you come up here in North Atlanta, you got Nuachota, the Cherokee capital. You got Etowah Mounds, that was a Kaligi mounds, ceremonial grounds and stuff. Through migration and through wars, things change. And right now in the process, I work with the Kilegi Creek in Oklahoma, and what we hope to do is reestablish the Kilegi back here in Georgia, because they're one of the many federally recognized tribes, but they're dual federally recognized tribes. And there's not many dual federally recognized tribes in this country, where they're federally recognized as Creek Indian and they're federally recognized as Kilegi. So they're a tribe without any land. And their mother town was located a little east of here, over there close to where I live. Anybody, I don't know who's all from Georgia, but over in Monroe and Watkinsville, Georgia area, Walton and Oconee County, there's a river that runs through there called the Appalachia River. And they actually had another Creek band called the Appalachia, but they were from down in South Florida. They were from the Panhandle of Florida. So sometimes people, when they wrote the history, they kind of mixed it up and they'd call them Appalachian Indians or Oconee Indians or so, but they're actually Kilegi. It means taker of heads, because they said when they went to war that even the women would take the heads of their enemies because they didn't want that bad spirit to come back on them. And if you ever get into Creek history with the Trail of Tears, they had the big battle of Horseshoe Bends down there in Alabama. They were the main warriors, or the Red Sticks, the Upper Creeks, that fought to try to keep the creeks from being removed. Andrew Jackson killed a Kilegi woman and pretty much stole her son and made it his son. So as much as we hear in history about how Andrew Jackson hated natives, he still raised the native as his own son. So little history on that, but we're in the Creek land, the Creek land here in Atlanta. A lot of people might think it's Cherokee, but it isn't. The two tribes that were here in the state of Georgia before the Cherokee were the Creeks and the Catawba. There were small bands of Catawba. Most of the Catawba were absorbed into the Creek Nation, like over in Barrow County, in Georgia, North Georgia. And then later on, the Cherokee came in and they started pushing, the creeks farther down, and settled in their areas to where it was later known as Cherokee Nation or Cherokee Territory up here in North Atlanta. Well, not Atlanta, but north of Atlanta. But then even at that, we had to remove one. They removed them out and they pushed them farther and farther out to where all we had was little remnants of Native Americans in the state of Georgia, to where we have 3 state recognized tribes here in Georgia. We have the Lower Muskogee Creek down in Tama, is an actual state reservation down in Wiggums, Tama, Georgia. We have the Cherokees of Georgia down in St. George. And so there's a lot here still today. I'm gonna sing a song real fast and we'll keep moving. I have my daughter dance. Hey yo, Taga on taga, telephone tago, telephone tago, ya hey hey ya hey ya, or da get Taga on taga, telephone tago. Telephone tago, ya hey ya hey ya. Or da get Thank you.
I would like to say this stage is hard to dance on. I'm used to grass. I'm not used to metal. That was very uncomfortable. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So that was some of our flavor from the East Coast, the Meherrin tribe. Next up, we'll see our Chickasaw fancy dancer, Miss Emily Coggin, take the stage to her own choreographed dance. now we're going to have an intertribal, so feel free to dance in your seats. This is this is a dance for everyone to join in, and we'll exit out. Hope you enjoy your conference and you've learned a little bit about the Indigenous folks of the Georgia area. Thank you.
That was incredible. Another round of applause. Thank you all so much. Good morning, grantees, and welcome to the 2023 APP Grantee Conference. There's so many of you all out there. It feels so wonderful. Welcome, welcome to Atlanta. Thank you again to the Atlanta Indigenous Peoples Association for that truly inspiring Native dedication. We open this way each year, and I think the fact that we can enjoy it in person this year instead of on a virtual screen just makes that much more of a difference. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that there are a few people joining virtually, so hello out there to you all who are not with us in person today, but we welcome you as well. A reminder, so just a quick logistical thing before I introduce myself and a few more words throughout this morning. Don't forget to download the conference app. It includes the full conference schedule, lets you connect with your conference participants, and will allow you to evaluate the conference breakout sessions and throughout the entire convening. We really want to hear from you about the next few days so that we can continue to tailor this and make this something that you all want to be part of and that can benefit you and the great work that you do across the country. So if you haven't already, download, it's called CVent Events from the App Store or Google Play. So with that, a little bit about myself. I'm Kimberly Waller. I serve as the Associate Commissioner of the Family and Youth Services Bureau, we lovingly refer to as FYSB. I've been in this role in the Biden administration since December of 2021. It has been my great honor to be in this role, to meet so many of you all, to do site visits and learn from the great work that you do across the country and the way that you support young people in the work. I'm excited to learn alongside you all and with you all these next few days. I'll be here the entirety of the time here, excited to go to breakout events, excited to hear from you all. I know many of you are presenting, so thank you all again. So, you know, first, traveling. I mean, it's a lot to get back into it. So welcome to the beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia. I really learned a lot from that recent presentation and excited to continue to learn more about this area. I know we have a lot of our Georgia folks who are presenting throughout the next few days as well. I hope your trip was really uneventful and successful, and that you've arrived ready to absorb the tremendous content we have planned for you. More importantly, thank you for your continuing commitment to working with America's youth and your efforts to guide, teach, mentor, and support those young people in looking at life in enduring and increasingly positive ways. Changing young people's lives is really what you all do, and thank you for that. Officially, this will be my second APP Grantee Conference in this role, and I suspect the same is for many of you all. Over the last 3 years, we've been virtual, as I mentioned, and it's the first time I've had the opportunity to enjoy this conference face to face. I can tell it already feels really different, and just thrilled to be here. Some of you may be wondering why we moved this event up to May. And the short answer is that the logistics of pushing the event into the digital space for 3 years resulted in this early date. But we do recognize that this change may have been challenging for you all as well. I know school is still in session right now, and we want you to know that we hear you. We thank you for being here and prioritizing this event, and commit to you that we will address any of these concerns around scheduling in advance of scheduling next year's conference. So please continue to share that feedback with us. We will continue to use it to shape this event and other trainings throughout the year. Being here in person has also meant some interesting stuff around physical spaces and timing. So we have over 700 people in attendance this year. This exceeds our 2019 number, which is the last time we held this conference in person. Over 700 people. It's incredible. Yes, yes. And really just is a testament to the passion that you all have and the commitment that you all have to the work. This represents 267 grantees from all different funding streams. We have 7 different funding streams that are implemented through this program, and we will be taking advantage of literally all of the space available that the Hilton has given us. So as you are planning your days, just be mindful of where your spaces are, where your rooms are, how much time you need to get from one place to another. But there's been plenty of time built into the schedule and the timeline so that it can make sure that you are not rushed, you're not running, but just be mindful of space and where you need to go. And if you have any questions, you can absolutely ask any of the RTI folks, any of our federal staff. Debbie's going to have some people stand up a little bit later, but just acknowledging you've got a lot of support here and a lot of incredible people that can help throughout the next few days. And of course, we're really looking forward to finally being able to make direct connections with as many people as possible over the next 2.5 days. There's lots of opportunities to do that. We've built in networking time. We've built in time for you to meet with your FPOs, your federal project officers, and we'll be around and ready to meet and mingle. As we know, our work is about the young people. And there are continuous efforts at the department and within FYSB and the Administration for Children, Youth and Families to involve and engage youth with lived experience in our work. And I'm really pleased to say this is something that you all have been doing for years. This is something that the APP staff are very dedicated to. And I'm already really just excited to be part of that and to learn from that. There's 2 specific activities that I wanted to lift up in this space and that I don't think you want to miss. First is our networking reception this afternoon. Before opening up time for some informal networking, so please join, we have a capoeira demonstration. My former colleague did capoeira like very actively and I got to go see her. So I'm telling you firsthand, you do not want to miss this. And this is an Afro-Brazilian martial arts style. It really is very exciting to watch. It's going to be pretty cool. And we'll also be treated to entertainment by peer educators from the Holistic Stress Control Institute here in Atlanta. And hopefully, if the weather cooperates, it will be outside. If not, it will be indoors. Another plug for the app. Go to the app. It'll tell you where the location will be. Second is the youth plenary. Historically, this is one of the most popular and well-attended sessions. I'm really honored to be able to facilitate that session this year. I did it virtually last year. It was really wonderful. I'll be joined by 5 program youth from across the country for a conversation about their experiences and in their respective programs, things they think they should, that we can improve, that would better serve them, better help them, and how the program and the good work that you have done have impacted their lives. So don't miss this plenary session. It's on Wednesday afternoon in the salon. You can look at more details in the app. And finally, being live and in person will reignite our poster sessions. Everybody loves a good poster session, and provide you the opportunity to interact with several exhibitors, go and have a chat, learn from them, share your feedback and perspectives, and just review those poster sessions out in the back area. We have a lot planned for our conference, so I'm going to get things started by introducing our opening speaker. Ms. Rebecca Jones Gaston serves as the Commissioner of the Administration on Children, Youth, and Families, which oversees the Children's Bureau, which is our partner bureau and implements all things child welfare, and of course, FYSB, the Family and Youth Services Bureau. Before her Senate confirmation in December 2022, Commissioner Jones Gaston was the Child Welfare Director for the Oregon Department of Human Services, which oversees child protection, foster care, and adoption services, a position she held since 2019. During her time as director, Oregon launched a major transformation built on trauma-informed, family and community-centered, and culturally responsive programs and services, something I know you all are intimately familiar with and passionate about. Commissioner Jones Gaston previously served as the Executive Director of the Maryland Department of Human Services Social Services Administration with oversight of child welfare and adult services. She's worked in the field of human services and child welfare for nearly 25 years as a social worker, an advocate, a therapist, consultant, and administrator. And in addition, she served as the National Campaign Director for Adopt Us Kids, a collaboration between the Children's Bureau and the National Ad Council, a major campaign she now oversees as the commissioner here at ACYF that continues to help increase the numbers of foster and adoptive families across the country. Commissioner, it is such an honor to have you here joining us. Thank you for bringing your commitment and passion to this work. Please welcome Commissioner Jones Gaston.
Good morning. Okay. I'm going to give you just a little chance. Good morning. Oh, that's much, much better. I know it's hard. The lights are dim. Got a little ambiance going this morning, but I feed off of energy. So thank you. Thank you, Kimberly, for the very warm welcome. This is my first APP conference, and I was very excited. I will say the minute I walked in the door in January, it was the first thing Kimberly made sure was on my calendar. And so I was like, I cannot miss this. It is a great opportunity for me to see all of you and to hear about the work that you're doing in the adolescence pregnancy prevention grantee work that you're doing. And I'm excited to be able to sit in on a couple of learnings and workshops here during my time here. But because of you and your hard work, as Kimberly mentioned, and your dedication, the youth and communities you serve are seeing the benefits. They're seeing the benefits of making informed and smart decisions. They are better off for it and continue to show resilience and, importantly, healthy and promising futures. ACYF, we have a lot of acronyms. Has anyone noticed that? Yeah. So, and I'm learning, I've lived in the child welfare space for a while, and I think I have those down. I'm learning a whole nother set of acronyms now. So I'm going to make my way. ACYF recognizes that the Family and Youth Services Bureau and the Adolescents Pregnancy Prevention Program are important to our mission and support positive growth for young people across the country. I take great pride in seeing the success. This is the benefit of being in the job. I get to take great pride in the work that you're doing. And I haven't lifted a finger at all, except to sign off on the grantee applications, which is important. But I get to stand up here and take some credit for it. So I recognize that. But really the hard work that you're performing every day and serving young people in your communities. And as you may have gathered, my professional background is kids. Everybody's a kid. My children who are full-grown adults are still kids. As long as you live in my bank account, you're still a kid. But speaking of the youth you serve, who are not in my bank account, speaking of the youth that you serve, something that may be hard to see from the vantage point of an individual grantee or individual program that you run is the collective impact that you've had altogether. This year, you've served over 400,000 young people. $400,000, that's not a small feat. That's a lot of young people that have felt the influence of your efforts and benefited from your grit and determination to help them with the wealth of healthy choices and positive relationships. That number actually is a significant increase from 2019 when we were all in person, remember those the before times, which is pretty amazing, and thinking from, we actually kicked off coming out of a really hard time in our lives with actually doing better than we did before, which is a phenomenal story to tell. And so speaking of resilience, whether you stayed engaged with the phone, text, emails, virtually, the screen, I'm meeting some of the team for the first time, and all I've seen is their heads. So I might, if I come up to you like this, it's to figure out if I know you or not. But we've all been living in that space, and you've been doing such a phenomenal job of thinking about how do you use incentives for good attendance, and social media, not my strong suit. My children will attest to that. But using social media to give shout outs and to show appreciation for their time. And those efforts are what sustained the growth of participation. One of our SRAE, a new acronym, grantees, who wanted to expand their reach in the community during the pandemic, launched an effort to do just that. They engaged high school principals as ambassadors to recruit additional schools to use the model and grow their footprint in the community. I think that's pretty amazing. The most recent edition of the APP Connect e-newsletter, if you're not signed up, sign up. The most recent edition of the newsletter had one of my favorite examples of helping youth put their best foot forward on the path to success. Among other fun activities designed to engage youth and channel Rebecca's inner youth, this prep grantee offered a youth summer internship program. Not only did the program give participating students hands-on skills and experience, but also resulted in several of them actually being hired by their internship employer. Kids working, that's good, that's phenomenal. In terms of reaching youth with positive inspiration, I just completely closed my screen, sorry. That's what happens when you don't memorize it. All right. In terms of reaching youth with positive inspiration, I hope you're familiar with APP's youth-focused social campaign, We Think Twice. WTT, yes. We think twice about what they do and make positive and healthy decisions in their lives. Instagram followers, 2, okay. So maybe not the population we're targeting, but if our Instagram indicator is at almost 5,700 followers and 6,000 teenagers. Oh, that's why. Visitors per month, and wethinktwice.org website activity has grown and is driving content and with quizzes, games, videos. So maybe you're not on Instagram, maybe you are, you know, young people. I'm hoping everyone's been on the wethinktwice.org website. Okay, there's more hands there. Okay, so I feel better. Okay, all right. If you haven't done so lately, get there. Check out Instagram. If you need a young person to help you, please reach out to one. I've been told that APP is just about ready to launch new material, including several pages in Spanish, and a new Ask the Expert video reels on youth mental health and healthy relationships. This is just the, yes, this is just the first of a long list of activities and new content that's being developed. Even beyond emails, I hope you continue to think about ways you can leverage We Think Twice and continue to give us feedback about how we can support you in the work that we're doing. So here we are in Atlanta. I'm not sure where the sunshine went. I'm having this challenge. I lived in Portland, went to DC, and then everywhere I go, it rains. That might be my fault, but this is the second time in 2 months I've been in Atlanta and it's rained. So much for the drought. You're welcome. But we're in Atlanta here for the Grantee Conference, and I love the theme. Reunite, reignite, and re-energize. It's a motto that I actually can use in a lot of spaces and places in my life. Reunite, reignite, re-energize our efforts on behalf of the nation's children and youth. I'm excited to be able to spend the full day here. That was a feat. It's like, I am not going to have the associate commissioner come after me. We'll be learning even more new and innovative strategies to effectively engage and support our young people. And the bridge for me in many ways to child welfare and my experience is that we know that children who experience child welfare oftentimes become parents who experience child welfare. And the importance of being able to have healthy relationships and make healthy choices is that much more important when you've experienced trauma in your life and disconnection. And so I absolutely appreciate the bridge that exists there. There's a lot planned over these next few days. That program is thick. So let's get to it. I'm very pleased to be here. I appreciate the work that you do. And I'm now going to turn it over to another person who keeps me in line. She sends polite emails nudging me. And then she's like, okay, is there something I can help you with to get this done? So Deputy Associate Commissioner Debbie Powell, who you all know, I'm sure, of the Family and Youth Services Bureau, who is a great partner, a great advocate, and a great supporter of me. So I greatly appreciate her. She's got more to share about what we have in store for the rest of the days together. Thank you. Take care.
Hello, hello. And thank you, Commissioner. It's just been a joy to work with the commissioner and the associate commissioner. As you see, they have high energy, and that's what I have. But I really do need somebody who's my yang, who kind of taps me down. And there's nobody there other than Dr. Matthews. So she's this calm one, brings me down sometimes. So yes, I am Debbie Powell. I serve as the Deputy Associate Commissioner at the Family and Youth Services Bureau. So welcome again to this year's APP Grantee Conference. And even though this has been said more than once today, it's so nice, so very nice to see you all in person. And I am so excited to get this opportunity. Finally, after 3 years, I need that connection, as you heard. And this connection, it energizes me. The virtuals was good. I'm giving everybody their props, but to have in person and to connect and to network is so very important to the work that you do. And before I introduce the plenary speaker, I would like to share some recent developments at FYSB, which you've heard is the Family and Youth Services Bureau, so I will not say that again. FYSB has recently completed a reorganization that included a name change for the Division of Optimal Adolescent Development, which is the division that administers the adolescent pregnancy prevention, PrEP, and SRAE programs. In order to lift up, we thought about this long and hard, and we wanted to be able to show the synergy between both of the programs and to lift up the incredible work being done by all APP programs and honor the deep history of focusing our work on positive youth development. And that's where the synergy comes in. All of us, no matter what funding stream you have, we are all concerned about our youth and giving them opportunities for positive youth development. So now, drum roll, the division is now called, guess what? The Division of Positive Youth Development. So, and Kimberly and I yesterday got an opportunity to actually see PYD, Positive Youth Development, in motion, in action. We had the opportunity to visit the Child Young Middle School yesterday and got a chance to meet some of the youth who have participated in the Holistic Stress Control Institute. And these young people were phenomenal. They started to warm up. At first we all have jitters, but they started to warm up. They started to ask us questions. And one young lady asked us about, well, how do you get over anxiety? And it took her about 30 minutes to get there, but she opened up and started to trust the adults in that room, to be vulnerable to us, to ask us that question. The young man talked about how he learned, financial strategies that would help him in the coming years to know how to manage his money. So that's what you guys do. You guys develop our young people. You give them control of their lives. You help them see that they are awesome, no matter where they are in their journey. So I thank you for that. And I thank the programs out there. I only got the chance to see one, but I know that you all are doing some of the very same things. So I so appreciate you in this space. The Division of Positive Youth Development, it's a new change, the name, but it's very subtle. It's a very subtle name, but one we wanted to be sure you're aware of. when you hear that. It's not just a concept, it's now the division name. And we will reinforce that throughout the conference, wherever you hear in all the different sessions, you'll hear the division of PYD. So just wanted to kind of throw that out at you now. We'll be starting off this morning with a plenary speaker featuring Ross Szabo. Mr. Szabo is sitting at that table, speaking on an increasingly significant challenge to our young people, youth mental health. We've done several focus groups with the grantees and with young people, and that's always rising to the top. You know, I kind of was surprised about that. Young people have such ability to hide things. You know, we don't really know what's going on with them many times, but that has always risen to the top. Mental health challenges that our young people are facing, and the pandemic just exacerbated them. They just made them bigger. You know, the isolation they've had to deal with, you know, the virtual saturation they've had to deal with. So we felt that because you all are on the front lines having to work with young people to approach those challenges, we wanted to bring somebody who is a professional to help you with some strategies on how you do that. Dr. Layman Hicks will deliver the closing plenary. Dr. Hicks is very high energy, and that's what we try to do when we close out, drawing from his own lived experience as an example of how one can overcome the pitfalls of troubled teen years and succumbing to peer pressure and negative behaviors, instead learning to believe in our dreams, overcoming the obstacles and getting back up. And that's what we're trying to teach our young people, right? There are going to be obstacles, but how to get back up and continue the journey. I think you'll enjoy Dr. Hicks very much. In between, we're going to take full advantage of the fact that we are not viewing each other on a screen. Some of us are. Hello. I'm glad you're here with us. But for the ones that are in the room, we're going to be setting aside some time for meet and greets with your federal project officers. These are going to be small, informal group gatherings where grantees and their assigned federal project officer can meet and learn a bit more about each other. You hopefully meet some of your peers in the state and the region where you're working, and so can make some connections there where you can have peer-to-peer learning even after this conference ends. Today and tomorrow will feature a total of 4 concurrent sessions offering dozens of programming options aligned with our 6 conference tracks, 3 of which, youth collaboration and engagement, advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, and holistic approaches to supporting adolescent development are new topics this year. And I really encourage you to try to stick your head in if you can't say that for the whole time. But I know some of these things are really important to your programs. And so we heard you, we've heard your input. And so we put these 3 new themes and tracks in place just for you. So please, if you have an opportunity, please stick your head in. And as you heard earlier, our networking session will take on a renewed energy this year. First, we have speed networking, during which grantees will have discussions on numerous programming topics in a short interview type format, while the second networking opportunity encourages a deeper dive into topics that align with your work. We anticipate both to be energetic gatherings full of beneficial conversations. So I look forward to that too. I'll be sticking my head in many different sessions, and especially the networking piece. And what you all have told us that you really look forward to is the FYSB update presentation, and that takes place tomorrow. And we'll introduce individually our APP staff at that time, share more about the division's name change, provide information about the 23 funding opportunities. We Think Twice campaign, which is so very important to our young people because it was developed by young people for young people. And so we want to figure out how we drive more traffic to the We Think Twice campaign social media outlet. The update session will also include a presentation about the digital hub for APP grantees, the Exchange. I hope all of you are very, very familiar with the Exchange. This site was developed as a central distribution point for grantees to get in-depth information and resources about APP programming topics, view various APP events, as well as information about all training and technical assistance offerings. So if you're not familiar with that, it's really important that you become familiar with that. So talk to your federal project officers in your small groups, or find somebody in RTI and talk to them about how you get connected to the Exchange. The Exchange is meant to be a one-stop shop for APP grantees, and we can't say it enough. The exchange should be one of the first stops when looking for resources and information about the APP program for both PrEP and SRAE grantees. If you're not familiar, as I said, please seek out a federal project offer, seek out RTI staff, and they will get you connected. They will get you access, whatever you need to start using all those resources that is in the exchange. So both the exchange and the We Think Twice, which Commissioner Jones Gaston just talked about, are valuable digital assets that can help to enhance the support your work. That's what we want to do. We're here to support you because you're our front line. And so whatever we can do to support you, that's what we want to do. So I'll put another plug in for completing your evaluation. We really use those evaluations to drive our technical assistance, our resource development, and our conferences. So please take a moment to do that in the app. And to all our grantees, those here with us in Atlanta, those here in the room, those back at home, and those are joining us virtually, we want to tell you that we know this past year has brought new and different challenges in delivering your program, but you have risen to the challenge. We have seen so many innovative ways that you have put in place to still continue to reach our young people, and we thank you for that. But as always, we continue, you continue, we continue to persevere and to put the interests of youth first and foremost, and we sincerely thank you from FYSB, from all the staff, from the senior leadership of what you do every single day. Because even though we get funding for these programs, without the people in this room, there would be no program. So we really appreciate you. We know how important you are to the work that we do. We consider you our partners. The most direct and personal connection between FYSB and our grantees is the dedicated federal projects officers that make up our APP program staff. You will meet them individually in the federal update session and in your networking sessions, but I want to ask the staff to stand because I recognize them as the backbone of the division. Please stand, give them a hand. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm not going to, I was going to call them individually, but I won't steal the thunder of the other workshop because I know Corey will be very upset with me. But I also want to ask to stand our interim director. Dr. Risa Matthew has stepped in whenever we need her. She's serving as the interim right now. Like saying that. She's serving as the interim director at this time. And I want to thank her. Yes, I want to thank her. Whatever FYSB needs, Risa is there. She is currently the actual director for the Division of Data, Performance, and Policy. Hopefully I got that right. That was a part of the reorganization change as well. But when the past director left, we asked Risa to step in again. And I wasn't above bribes. And she said she'd do it. And so I definitely want to acknowledge that her commitment to FYSB. Thank you so much, Risa. So a part of ensuring we advance our conference experience is to incorporate direct input, as I've said to you. And so partly through this conference, all the conferences, partly through stakeholder engagement, you engaging with us, telling us what you need, partly with talking to your federal project officers, but also through our grantee planning committee. The committee for this conference is a group of 14 grantee staff, representing each of the 7 funding streams who convened several times over the course of the year to provide insights on planning, logistics, content, and conference design. So I would be bereft if I did not show my appreciation by also, if you're in the room, asking the Grantee Conference Planning Committee to stand. We're also going to acknowledge them this evening with a small token of our appreciation. But if you're in the room and you were a part of that Grantee Planning Committee, please stand. So I said to properly recognize your contribution, we will give a small little presentation to you of a token of our appreciation at the networking reception at 5 o'clock this evening, hopefully outside. That's what we're hoping for. But if not, it'll be on the first floor. So just keep scrolling that app to make sure you know where to meet us, so you can actually see all the 14 members of our planning committee and give them the acknowledgement they so well deserve. It was free labor. And when we have free labor, we want to thank everybody and acknowledge you with a little token from FYSB. So not to be left out, I want to give a special acknowledgement to our internal Federal Conference Planning Committee, the co-leads, Ricky, Ricky, we call him Ricky Richards, but I just found out Ricky is from Louisiana, and the way we really should be pronouncing his name is Ricky Richard. So Ricky Richard, okay, and Shakira Williams. Shakira, please stand. And also our RTI partners on the planning committee, and I'm going to call their names. They may be out working really hard out there, what they've been doing for the last 9 months, but Michelle, Meredith, Lisa, Allison, and Lori, please wave if you're in the room. If not, you'll see their name tags out there when you go out to the desk. We want to thank them for all the wonderful work they've done. They're still working. Michelle gave us a tour really late last night, about 6:30, walking us all around the conference space. So they have gone above and beyond to make sure this conference is successful for us all. So I just wanted to call them out. I think that I get now the opportunity to introduce Ross. Let me make sure I've done my due diligence, that I gave in everything I was supposed to say, because they'll tell me if I didn't. No, I did it. But one more thing, even though we just thanked the RTI Planning Committee, RTI is a 24/7 operation. This is just a small piece of what they do. All the products that you see on the exchange, they have something to do with the development of those products. They talk to you when you call and have questions. So I just have to call out hopefully most of them. I know most of them, but if I've forgotten anybody, I just apologize ahead of time. So I want to first thank the project director, Barry. Hopefully Barry's in the room. Barry can raise her hand. She is the most awesomest. There she is back there. I've worked with Barry for a number of years, and she just continues to get better and better every year. I also want to call out Denise, Meredith, once again, Michelle, Katie, Amanda, Chloe, Ashton, Nick, and hopefully I got everybody in. Katie, did I get everybody in? Thank you. Okay, and if I didn't, blame it on my head, not my heart, because I just really enjoy working for everybody at RTI. Okay, so finally, I'm done. I have the opportunity now to introduce, it's my pleasure to introduce our opening plenary speaker, Ross Szabo. Ross is the wellness director at the Geffen Academy at UCLA and the CEO of the Human Power Project, a company that creates cutting-edge mental health curricula. An award-winning speaker, author, and teacher, Ross was the director of the National Mental Health Awareness Campaign for 8 years. In that time, he spoke to over 1 million people and wrote a book titled Behind Happy Faces. After 8 years on the road, he burned out. Okay, we all can relate to burnout, right? Okay, so he did what anyone would do. If you're exhausted and you want to rest, you join the Peace Corps. Ross served in Botswana for 2 years. When Ross came home, he decided to start his own company to create mental health curricula for people of all ages. He also authored the book, A Kid's Book About Anxiety, which was named one of Oprah's favorite things in 2020. And he is the host of a YouTube series called A Kid Class About Mental Health. Today, Ross is a social pioneer who has and continues to head and lead the youth mental health movement. He is here today to talk to us about mental health. Get ready for a very dynamic presentation, and please join me in welcoming Ross Szabo to the stage.
All right, what's up? How's everybody doing this morning? It's good to see all of you. It's great to be in person and to hear all these new announcements. You guys are closing with Layman Hicks, who's one of my closest friends. I didn't even know he was closing this. That was news to me. I was like, oh, y'all get Layman? That's a really great opportunity. But you know, one of my first things to always announce in a banquet room is like, your chairs are not fixed in cement. So you don't have to do yoga this morning. You don't have to be like, oh, I can't, you can move your chairs, get comfortable. They lean back and make yourselves comfortable. I thought it was so appropriate this morning to start with that history lesson of Georgia and Indigenous people. It's really important to know your ancestry. And it was so fascinating to hear him talk about connection, because connection is what all of you really do. Today, we're going to talk about mental health, because somehow anyone who's working with young people today has also taken on the role of therapist, which is an interesting point to take. But it's about connection. It's about you pouring your lives into your work, and it's hard work. As a speaker, I always get to fly in to these things and fly back out. And I say every time I speak, the most important work is done by you every single day. You're the ones on the front lines. You're the ones who are trying to connect, trying to hope, trying to build belief into young people. And I really thank you for that. And it's great to be here. We are going to talk about mental health today. If you could bring up the slides now, that would be great. One of the biggest challenges I have as soon as I stand up in front of any audience and say, I'm going to talk to you about mental health, is all of you have different ideas of what that means. If you Google image mental health, really need those slides though. That's gonna be real tough now. All right. If you Google image mental health, these are the images that tend to come up. We're trying it, but no. All right, we're gonna have to do the old school, advance the slide, please. So when most people hear the words mental health, next, no. All right. I'm gonna need you to manually advance the slides, please, somebody. Okay, but when most people hear the words mental health, they tend to think of a variety of different things. Some people think of celebrity breakdowns. Some people think of school shootings. Some people think of mass murder. Some people think of, you know, all kinds of different things. And I think one of the biggest challenges we have in our society today is that we don't have a uniform definition of mental health. So some people think it's for people with mental health disorders. Other times you say mental health, people think it's for people who are going to spa retreats and doing massages and all kinds of other things. So we do need a clear definition of mental health. Next slide, please. And that definition is mental health isn't about having problems. Mental health is about addressing the challenges in your life. Mental health is not about you either dealing with a problem or not dealing with a problem. Mental health is like physical health. And that has become a big buzzword in our society today, that mental health is like physical health. When you want to work on your physical health, you know you have to exercise, eat right, know your family history, take care of your body. When you want to work on your mental health, you have to think about how you communicate, what your relationships are like, what your coping mechanisms are, and how you build your mind. The one thing that people always forget about mental health when we say it's like physical health is that it's work. It's actual work. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot for you to be able to do it. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is really just the landscape of mental health and what we see around this country. I do run a school where we have a program where we teach about mental health once a week, every single week, from grade 6 through grade 12, which is awesome. We are doing a lot of work in the summers to train other schools how to do what we're doing and really make mental health a part of the education system. But what I'm going to share with you today is really how to connect and talk to other young people about their mental health. I'm going to talk to you about my personal story. I have a really intense personal story. I always get this concept of like, how did you become the person who started talking about mental health? You don't look like you have a lot of issues. I think that's the key here. There is no real spokesperson for mental health. We all have issues. What I'm going to share with you today is my own personal story with mental health and how intense it was. I grew up in a family with trauma and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 16. I was hospitalized for attempting to take my own life when I was 17. Went through a lot of other difficult experiences after that. I don't share my personal story to scare you. I would never want any of you to be like, oh man, Ross's life really sucked. I guess I'll go to the next session. That's not why we're here. I share my personal story to get you to think about your own lives. Because as devastating as the youth mental health crisis is, the adult mental health crisis is far worse. Far worse. The youth mental health crisis has a lot of really catchy headlines and statistics, but the highest suicide rate is in adult males. The rates of addiction, dysfunction, the rates of anxiety, depression, everything, it's all far higher in us than it is in young people. So we cannot take this approach of talking about mental health without looking at ourselves as well. And then after I talk about all of that, I am going to give you some tips on coping mechanisms and really how you can share your own story effectively and how you can take care of yourselves in this hard work that you're doing. This clicker is not going to work. Okay, it is going to work. All right, we got this. So as I was alluding to, you got the youth mental health crisis statistics on lock. You know that the rates of anxiety, depression, all these other things have gone up. The most relevant statistic, though, is that we have made gains in the amount of people seeking help. It used to be around 70% of people didn't seek help. Now it's around 50% of people don't seek help. When you ask young people why they do not seek help, the answers are pretty common, pretty familiar. Shame, embarrassment, denial. They don't know the best ways to do it. They may not have time. They may not have access to resources. It's still a sign of weakness. Why don't you suck it up? Why don't you deal with it on your own? Why are you crying? Trust is still a big issue. Once you share and open up with someone and they break your trust, it can be really hard to trust again. But the number one reason that Generation Z does not seek help is because they don't want to burden someone else. So the first time in our society, when we ask the question, are you okay with a friend seeking help for their mental health, almost 100% of Gen Z says yes. When we ask, would you seek help for a mental health issue? Their number one answer is, I don't want to put that on someone else. I don't want to bring them down. So that's quite a paradox if you think about it, right? On one hand, you have these people saying like, yeah, it's okay to seek help. But on the other hand, they're like, man, I don't want to burden anyone. The reason I always start with this question is because once you have a clear definition of mental health, you have to answer this question. When I was 16, I had access to some of the best mental health treatment in the country, and I wasn't compliant with it because I felt stupid, embarrassed, ashamed, weak, felt like I should suck it up, felt like one day I would wake up and my problems would go away on their own. So people always ask, what can I do to change mental health in my relationships, in my family, in my community, in the population I'm working with? You have to start here. Why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't we seeking help? And you have to break down those reasons. Because if you don't break down those reasons, you could get someone to seek help and they won't be compliant with it because of all those feelings associated with it. So let's say you are fortunate. You give someone a clear definition of mental health, you get them to seek help. What you'll find is that we don't have a vocabulary for mental health. When you ask people how their mental health is, they usually give you one of three answers. It's good, it's bad, or it's fine. And fine is really just a way to say, like, I don't want to talk about it, but it's not actually fine. And so the next movement of mental health, the actual future of mental health education, is mental health literacy. 60 years of research for physical health literacy or physical health vocabulary has shown us that when people can name their body parts, when they can identify when something's wrong, they often seek help and talk about their physical health sooner. Even if you're just sitting at home and you're like, I'm going to Google these symptoms, and you come up with some like rare form of like skin cancer, and you at least sought out help. You were like, well, I don't know if this is right. So the next movement, the entire future of mental health education, is not social emotional learning. It's not mental disorder or mental illness education. It's actually mental health literacy. This is a public health approach that everyone can do. It has the most bipartisan support, which is beyond difficult to get. And it is a public health approach to put into schools because schools can't be therapy centers. They can't be places where everyone unpacks emotion and then tries to take a test and do things. So the whole future of this is mental health literacy. And you might be wondering, like, well, what does that mean? When we say physical health is like mental health, we actually have to describe that. We can't just hope people get it. And so one of the first things is, if you think about physical health, all of you have different categories for physical health challenges. You know the difference between a sprained ankle and a broken leg. You know the difference between having a cold and having a flu, unless of course you're a guy. Because when I have a cold, it's really difficult for me. And I need a lot of like support and care. I don't know how hard the cold could be. And until I get that attention, I can't it's very difficult for me. But you know the difference between diabetes and cancer. You know this because you have been taught these differences since you were in pre-kindergarten. We can do the same thing for mental health. So for mental health, there are different categories of challenges. Everyday challenges are things all of us go through. Environmental factors, the home you grew up in, the school you went to, the way you were raised, significant events, experiences with loss, change, and rejection, mental health disorders, and developmental disabilities. We need to actually have different categories for mental health challenges because people are confusing things. They're treating mental health as one umbrella. So if they have stress, it must be an anxiety disorder. If they go through a breakup, it must be clinical depression. These are very different things that need different areas of treatment and attention for us to be successful. But the next thing, and the biggest thing we need to do, is really change the entire way we frame mental health. When most people think of a mental health spectrum, they think of this one. On one side, you have people who are sane. In the middle, you have people with mild mental health disorders. And on the far end, you have people with severe mental health disorders. This spectrum is broken for a lot of reasons. The number one reason it's broken is I was diagnosed with a severe mental health disorder, and I am sane at the same time. So if I am on polar opposite ends of the same spectrum at the same time, chances are that spectrum is no longer accurate. But the more dangerous thing that this spectrum promotes is that people with problems need to seek help. And people who don't have problems don't need to seek help. Number one, all of you in this room know someone who doesn't have a diagnosis, who needs far more help than someone who might have a diagnosis. And number two, this is not how we treat physical health. You will never get advice in your life that's like, hey, you don't need to eat healthily until you get diabetes. You do not need to exercise until you get cancer. With physical health, we are preventative and proactive, and we promote the idea that everyone should take care of themselves, not just people with problems. We would never create a physical health spectrum where you try to jam every physical health challenge into one thing, where you're comparing like a sprained ankle to like a torn ACL to like cancer to, something else. With physical health, if you think about it, you choose one issue and you think about how you function with it. That's what we need to do with mental health. We need to change the spectrum so that you take one mental health issue and you put it on this spectrum. So let's just take a fun issue like stress. There are people in today's society who don't have stressors. They get to walk around life. They don't think about their mental health much. They just get to float through. These are the people we hate most in life, but they exist. And they get a place on the spectrum. Actually, this is really important when you're teaching middle school students, because there are middle school students who haven't experienced mental health challenges yet. So they need a place on the spectrum or the spectrum doesn't work. Also, if you think about it, there are people in our physical health world who don't have to exercise or eat healthily. They're naturally thin and strong. We hate them too, but they get a place on the spectrum as well, right? So let's continue with stress. Most of you in this room, your stress level is just difficult to balance. It's hard. You may not sleep as much as you want. You may be overwhelmed, but you're not doing anything to change it. Further down that spectrum is you might use help to balance. Using help to balance could be any coping mechanism. A song, listening to music, talking to a friend, exercise, yoga, meditation, whatever it is that you do. Further up the line, you might need constant assistance to balance. So for young people, this could be like getting a tutor, going to extra office hours, getting a program to support you, being around all of you could be some more consistent steps to balance. And then at some point in our lives, we're all unable to balance our stress. That could be for an hour, that could be for a day, that could be for a couple weeks. This spectrum is a lot more realistic though, because it lets you know where you are and the kind of support you need. And we put using help in the middle because that's where it is for physical health. None of you ever see someone exercising and think, what a freak, what a weirdo. Why are they doing that? Most of us see someone exercising and we think, oh man, I should exercise. We don't, but we think about it. We're like, that person killing it. We need to put using help in the middle to normalize it, not making help as a last resort. This is why mental health literacy is the future of mental health education, because it's actually making it like physical health education. There are a lot of other parts of mental health literacy. The next part is understanding the difference between normal emotions and mental health disorders. In our society right now, we are doing this thing where we don't want anyone to be uncomfortable. And so when we don't want anyone to be uncomfortable, we stop using the words that are being about uncomfort. Part of being an adolescent is being bored and being uncomfortable. That's how you learn things. So some of the more dangerous things we're doing are we are replacing the word nervous with anxiety. Nervousness is a normal feeling. It's the butterflies you get in your stomach before you're about to take a test, before you're about to play a sport or perform. It's the butterflies you get when you have a huge crush on someone, but you don't know how to talk to them. So you just follow them on social media and hope a relationship forms. I don't know that it works that way. You can tell someone who's nervous to calm down. When someone has an anxiety disorder, it's either a low-level anxiety that makes someone so uncomfortable that they can't function the way they want, or a high amount of anxiety that shuts them down. The opposite of having an anxiety disorder is not being calm. It's being able to see reality. But when we confuse nervousness with anxiety, one, we're conflating nervousness to the point of a mental health disorder, which it's not, and we're dismissing people who have serious mental health disorders by telling them to calm down. We do the same thing with depression. There's a huge difference between feeling depressed or sad or upset, which has an identifiable cause, which may be difficult, but the opposite of feeling depressed is happiness. When you have clinical depression, you often don't have a cause. You stop taking care of yourself. You may have thoughts of death or suicide. Those symptoms last for weeks or months. The opposite of clinical depression is vitality. Same thing with body image issues and eating disorders. It's natural to wake up every day and look in the mirror. All of us probably did it this morning and not like something about ourselves. Could be anything. But the opposite of that is learning to love yourself for who you are. And eating disorder is about control, body dysmorphia, being able to see reality. And then this last piece is really important. It is extremely common and typical to have a thought about your existence, to have a thought about death. Further up that line, you might start obsessing about death or suicide or taking your own life or having thoughts about people close to you dying. And then on the end of that spectrum is a plan to take your own life. If we don't start having conversations with people about existence, about having a sense of purpose, about thinking about what to be grateful for, about how to be appreciative of our lives, then they move up that spectrum. And once they get up that spectrum, they start having an anxiety depression loop that keeps their suicidal thoughts on repeat until they get to the place of having a plan to take their own life. These spectrums are important. It's a way to frame mental health differently and allow people to see where they are and what they might need. Another piece of mental health literacy has to deal with stress. In our society today, we really love to say it's young people having a competition to see who can be more stressed out. Guess where the young people are learning it from? Us. Because I guarantee you, even if you saw someone, let's say like you came to this conference, you haven't seen someone in a while, you're like, oh, how are you? I guarantee you almost the most common answer is, I'm busy. I'm so busy. And then once someone is busy, you have to out-busy. I am also busy. I am so busy too. And a lot of you in this room are in the sandwich generation where you're now taking care of your parents and your kids. And at some point, your parents become kids. I was literally sitting here before I came up on stage, texting my mom. She's flying out to LA to see me today. And I had to be like, okay, did you get to the airport? And did you do these? And what are you doing now? And where did you eat? Did you drink water, Mom? What's happening? So obviously there's a competition of stress in this society. It's not just young people. When we are trying to out-busy each other, when we are trying to see who has more responsibilities, more to do, we are feeding into that. But the most important thing to know is that there's a huge difference between good stress and bad stress. Good stress motivates you. It activates your fight or flight mechanism for a short time and it helps you get things done. Bad stress debilitates you. It's headaches, body aches, insomnia, all of the things people associate with stress. The challenge is when I say just the word stress to all of you in this room, how many of you immediately think of good stress? No one. Okay, some of you. All right. If you start processing all stress in your body, in your brain as being bad, longitudinal studies show that you have a higher rate of physical and mental health disorders. And on average, people who process all stress as being bad die 5 years before life expectancy. You do have good stress in your life. If you can talk to young people about what stress motivates you, if you can talk to them about seeing what stress motivates them, and then what stress needs more attention, it actually shifts their dynamic. It helps them. And all this is important because the second largest period of brain growth in a person's life is between the ages of 12 and 25. First largest period of brain growth is 0 to 2. Really cool. None of you will ever remember that. But the second largest period of brain growth between 12 and 25 is so powerful that we spend most of adulthood either trying to undo adolescence or relive adolescence, depending on our level of self-awareness. This period of brain growth is so powerful that people with severe dementia and Alzheimer's can't remember most of anything except that time period of their life between 12 and 25. And what's happening during this time period is people are forming their identity, their internal voice, they're facing loss, change, and rejection for the first time, and they're building that brain. The human brain matures around age 25. For young women, the human brain matures somewhere between 22 and 25. For young men, the brain matures somewhere between 25 and like 40. Maybe, it's difficult, we'll see. It's a different approach. Typically it's 25 to 28. Young women's brains mature faster because they enter puberty sooner. I don't know, that's a race anybody wants to win. They're winning it, but that is why. And when we say the brain is maturing, all we mean is that it's developing back to front. It connects back to front. So the last part of the brain to fully mature is the prefrontal cortex, which is only important for things like emotional regulation, thought, planning, things like that. And so a lot of times people see pictures of the brain like this. But between 12 and 25, the brain doesn't look like this. It looks more like this. It's wiring itself. It's forming habits, patterns, connections, communication styles, coping mechanisms. For this reason alone, mental health isn't something you do just when you have a problem. It's not something you try just because something's wrong. It's something that you have to wire and foster and grow, much like your physical health. And this time period of brain growth is where the human brain is being pumped with a lot of dopamine. And how young people channel that dopamine can often make a huge difference in their lives. So a lot of research has shown if you have someone in your life who is a risk taker, and you will know, you usually know when a child is a risk taker when they're like 2 and they just run in the pool and have never swam before. And you're like, oh, might be a risk taker. They need to channel that dopamine into healthy things that give them that dopamine hit, that aren't substances, that aren't decisions that can harm them. So getting a young person who's more risk-taking into sports, martial arts, rock climbing, things that give them a risk and that dopamine hit can help keep them safe. For teens who are more introverted, they will often use substances to numb themselves. So risk takers use substances to do more risky things. Introverts use substances to shut down or numb themselves. Matching introverted people with art, music, things like writing, poetry, stuff like that can really help them get that dopamine release in a safe way. So this is the landscape you're dealing with. This is mental health literacy. This is how mental health can be more like physical health. I'm going to shift to sharing a little bit more about my personal story. 1, to help you think about your own journeys. And 2, to help you think about the journeys that other people are on. I have a really interesting beginning to my personal story. I live in Los Angeles now. I didn't grow up in LA. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Thank you, but that's not interesting. Here's what is interesting about my personal story. I was actually born in Bethlehem and raised in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with my home state, an hour north of Philadelphia, our two towns, Bethlehem and Nazareth, they are next to each other. Nazareth is a town still of about 2,400 people. So if you're pregnant and you live in Nazareth, there's no hospital. So if you're pregnant, you got to go to Bethlehem to have your child and then flee back to, I don't know how my mom got back. She went back to Nazareth. Not on this map is a town called Egypt. So you could actually be born in Bethlehem, raised in Nazareth, and then have to move to Egypt if the political circumstances is warranted that you're like, oh, I got to get to Egypt now because this is a little too much. Nazareth has this other person I can't be around. I share this part of my personal story, one, because this is where my mental health issues started. I feel like, they set expectations pretty high when that happens. But any story with mental health starts with a photo of a family. This is a really great first family photo for my family. There's a lot happening in this photo. This is the early 1980s. My parents had an actual conversation. They were like, hey, what do you think we should wear? How about those matching track jumpsuits, the turtlenecks? I mean, that's a good look. In this photo, I am the baby in yellow being held by my dad. I have two older brothers. My oldest brother's in the plaid. He is 7 years older than me. My middle brother is 2.5 years older than me. He's in the blue. What I love about my brother's jacket in this is I see people in LA wearing this jacket all the time now. And I'm like, oh, man, my brother was ahead of his time. But what I love most about family photos is all of you can look at this family photo and you can project your own emotions into it, but you don't know these people. You would never look at this photo and know that my dad was raised by a classic 1950s alcoholic father, that my dad was never hugged once, that he was never told he was loved, that he never had a birthday party, that he had no support outside of his home, and he was often a survivor of extreme physical violence, much like his mom, his brother, and his sister. When you look at this photo, you never know that my mom grew up in a home with two parents who were alcoholics and a mom who had a severe anxiety disorder. And my mom's childhood was filled with extreme emotional and psychological abuse and just chaos. When these two people got together, they did what most parents do. They decided they were going to raise us differently. So my dad, who ended up having 3 boys, decided he was going to tell us he loved us every day. And he was going to hug us every day. From the time I started playing sports at age 5 until I stopped, my dad was on the sideline for everything. From the time I started speaking, if there was a presentation that was within a 14-hour drive of my dad, he was in the front row. I lost my dad 6 years ago, but he made 1,000,000% change from the way he was raised to the way he raised us. My mom, who grew up in chaos and emotional abuse, decided she would flip that script and become the ultimate hype woman. And not like a realistic hype woman, like the hype woman that's like, you can go to the moon, you can do all these things, but it meant so much to us, especially in our darkest moments, because she believed it, because she didn't fill our home with psychological and emotional abuse. She filled it with positivity. My parents raised us the best that they could, but the one thing they couldn't change is that on both sides of our family, we have severe mental health disorders. Bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety disorders, and addiction. As much as I joke about Bethlehem and Nazareth, that was the epicenter of the Industrial Revolution for this country for a lot of decades. Most of the steel in New York City in the 1900s came from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. All of the steel in the Golden Gate Bridge came from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. 75% of the cement in the Panama Canal came from Nazareth, Pennsylvania. It was a blue-collar town. You went to the factory, you did your job, you probably drank, and you went home. And so anytime I put this picture up, I want you to think about your own families, your own story. As the Indigenous people said at the beginning of this, we all have a story. The most important thing for your mental health is knowing yours. It starts with your family photo and the ancestors that came before you. It continues in the family photo that you created and your kids. and your cousins, your aunts, your uncles. If you don't know the mental health history of your family, try to find out, because that is your biggest link. That is your biggest source of knowledge. My parents gave me an amazing childhood. My life changed significantly when I turned 11. This is me at age 11. I'm on the right. What we're doing in this photo is dropping my oldest brother off for his sophomore year at the University of Pennsylvania. My oldest brother is really smart. I want to emphasize books, because outside of books, this individual is still working on a lot. But he is so book smart that he went to the University of Pennsylvania when he was 16 to major in physics. And he got through his freshman year. Everything went really well. We dropped him off in August for his sophomore year. And then at the end of October, my dad got a call from the University of Pennsylvania Hospital saying, your son has been determined to be a threat to himself and others. We've hospitalized him against his will. We need you to come down here immediately. My oldest brother had his first episode of bipolar disorder when he was, I think he was 18. Birthdays. June was his birthday, right? So what happened was he hadn't slept for about 8 days, and he was wandering around campus trying to teach classes, going into stairwell, singing loudly at night. I do want to point out that this is also a little bit of privilege. Had my brother been a person of color and was acting erratically, he's probably getting arrested. And he's probably going into the prison industrial complex and the judicial system that he may never get out of. My brother was hospitalized in the end of October. 2 weeks later, I went down to visit him in a psychiatric ward. I was 11. 2 months after that, my grandmother died. 10 months after that, my best friend was killed. And 2 months after that, my grandfather died. So between the ages of 11 and 12, this little guy you see in this photo went through a lot of loss and a lot of trauma. And no one knew how to talk to me about it. I went from hospital to hospital to visit my brother, to visit my grandmother, to visit my grandfather as they were dying. I went to 3 major funerals. And what I learned at that time was to regulate my own emotions. And what I did first was checked in on everyone else, made sure everyone else was okay, did what I could to make people laugh, but I never shared my own emotions. And then around age 12, I started drinking alcohol. Obviously, I didn't drink every day. I drank probably 2 to 4 times a month, but I found that when I drank, I felt numb, and that felt better than having that trauma. I share that with you because most people develop their coping mechanisms for the rest of their lives around this 12 to 25 time period. You are dealing with a population of people who are going through trauma, who are going through a lot of different things. You in your own lives have gone through trauma. This is when we start to emotionally regulate. There are programs that can help with this. So social emotional learning can build that emotional intelligence, naming emotions, identifying emotions. Mindfulness is important because it actually activates the prefrontal cortex. They do exist before 25. You just have to activate them. With younger kids, if you can get them to meditate, I don't know, you're some kind of saint. It's better to do mindfulness activities that are active. Have them tense all their muscles and release them. Have them do things that engage them with mindfulness instead of just trying to get them to be quiet. If you can build up to that point, great. But sometimes it's important to start active. I share these programs because they're important. I didn't have them, but they're important. By the time I turned 16, it's okay to laugh at this photo. At 16, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And the diagnosis is obviously important. But what was more important was I learned to drink alcohol before I learned to talk about my feelings. And I've now been hiding trauma and emotions for 5 years. So by the time I was diagnosed, the symptoms were what the symptoms were, but the coping mechanisms were what was going to drive me. After my diagnosis, I kept drinking and I kept hiding. And when I went into my senior year of high school, I went into a really deep state of depression. And that didn't just happen in a day. In September of my senior year, I started feeling lonely, felt like there was no one to talk to, but I always thought like one day I'll wake up and this loneliness will go away. It didn't. November of my senior year, I started having thoughts of death and suicide. That built to the point where I was thinking about suicide and death 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But again, from age 11, I didn't talk to anyone about my emotions. So at age 17, I wanted to figure out how I could do that more. How could I hide more? So for 2 months of my senior year, anytime I was around people, I put on a happy face, made everyone laugh, made everyone smile. And then I went home and I either cried myself to sleep or I didn't sleep at all. I honestly believed one day I would wake up and I would just want to live again. But unfortunately, that day never came. On January 5th of my senior year, I was hospitalized for attempting to take my own life. When I tried to kill myself, I didn't want to die. I just couldn't handle living the way I was living anymore. And taking my own life felt like a way out of that pain. It's not, but it feels that way. When I was in the hospital, a couple days into it, we had group therapy and everyone had to talk about why they were there. And the stories before mine were filled with really traumatic things. When they asked me why I was there, I didn't know what to say. And they said, all right, if you don't know why you're here, can you tell us about yourself? And I was like, yeah, I could do that. My name is Ross. I've been president of my class for 2 years. I'm a member of SAD and peer helper. I volunteered 5 years to the Special Olympics. I attended the National Youth Leadership Forum in Washington, D.C. I have a 3.8 GPA, and I stopped. And I felt really stupid because the life I was describing was my external life that everyone saw, but it wasn't the actual internal life that I lived. If I was going to be honest, I should have stood up and said, hi, my name's Ross. I hate myself. That's why I'm willing to binge drink and drive. I don't care if I die. I didn't say that. And I don't share this part of my personal story because it's about me. I share it because it's actually about all of you. In your work, you have to be on. You have to be there for other people. Because you have this role in your community, you're not just there for the kids, you're there for the adults, and then your families, and then all these other people. If you have an external life that everybody sees, and you don't address your internal life, and your internal life is different, you run the risk of it imploding. It's like the oxygen mask on the plane. Your role in your community for the population that you work with is really critical, but it's also critical for you to take care of yourselves. And then, of course, this ties into the kids you work with. That happy face that they put on, whatever they can do to make everyone think everything's okay, and then inside they're not the same. Well, it's a huge issue. I was in that hospital for 2 weeks. Eventually, I got out, went back to high school, graduated, went to American University for 2 months, had a massive relapse, came home. Then I was in and out of psychiatric wards and different colleges for like 4 years. At age 22 was actually when I had my rock bottom moment where I drank so much that I passed out for about 22 hours. So it wasn't until I was 22 where I was like, oh, this is real. I'm going to die. The two most important things I learned in my recovery were, number one, if you hate yourself, it is very hard to go through recovery. When I hated myself, I had no consequences. I drove drunk, I did drugs, I had unprotected sex because I didn't care if I died. The first thing I had to learn to do was like myself. The second thing I learned is that I never chose to go through any trauma, but I could choose to change the way I coped with it. I could stop hiding my emotions. I could stop drinking. I could start finding ways to express myself, to be vulnerable, to be open. I could replace drinking with exercise or other coping mechanisms that gave me that release that weren't dangerous. Everyone's journey with mental health is different, but the building blocks of mental health really are coping mechanisms. I was eventually able to graduate from college. I went into the fancy career you heard about in my introduction. I still work on my mental health every single day. I don't like to go to conferences and make you think like, oh, it's like a Disney movie and like you slow clap and I walk out of this like dark place and now everything's great. It's better. I'm doing better this year than I was last year, but it's a lot of work. And that's important to know. You can take pride in doing that work. You don't have to have it figured out in your position. You don't have to be the source of all knowledge. You can be vulnerable with people you trust and be like, yo, this is hard. Life is hard. There's not a presentation or a book or a saying that can instantly change that. Life will forever be where you put your energy and what you do with it. So give yourself some of it. Give yourself some of that energy. And when we talk about coping mechanisms, you do cope every single day. You cope with your family, your job, your future, your finances, all kinds of other stuff. And every time you cope, your brain is actually firing neurotransmitters and building neural pathways. The longer you do anything in life, the better you get at it. So if you look at the world's top athletes, These are people who have played a sport for so long, they no longer have to think about it. When Serena was on the court, she never thought, here comes a yellow ball, I need to move my arm and hit it. It was an automatic reaction. She didn't have time to think. You build these neural pathways for everything you do. For your jobs, for driving, for walking, for music, for all kinds of stuff. But you also build these neural pathways for coping mechanisms. And the longer you use a coping mechanism, the deeper those neural pathways get. The deeper those neural pathways get, the harder it is to change them. So take a moment and just think about how you cope, how you talk to yourself, how you release emotions, how you process emotions. How long have you been doing that? If there are coping mechanisms that you want to change, or there are coping mechanisms for young people that you see them wanting to change, there are steps. And there are mainly 5 steps. The first step is you have to want to actively change a coping mechanism. Nobody can do it for you. This is the most frustrating part about being a human. You can't jump into someone's body and make them do something. You've probably been in a situation where you've seen someone with a mental health disorder or seen somebody with addiction and been like, I wish I could get them to wake up to see it. And until they see it, there's not much you can do except love them, support them, do all this other stuff. I want to also point out, we're talking about changing coping mechanisms. People always love to say to me, well, you know, it takes 30 days to change a habit. That's cool. These aren't habits. These are coping mechanisms influenced by biology, environment, and trauma. It takes time. So the first step is you have to want to do it. Second step is you have to be able to identify the coping mechanism when you're using it. It was one thing for me to be like, yo, I want to stop binge drinking. It was a separate thing for me to say, here's an emotional trigger. Here is when I binge drink. The third step is replacing the ineffective coping mechanism. The fourth step is practicing the effective coping mechanism until you become the Serena Williams of that coping mechanism. And the fifth step is having an environment that supports you and allows you to change. You do not change a coping mechanism from going from like point A to point B. You go from point A to like maybe some change and then you go back. And then maybe some more change, you go back. 95% of thoughts that you have every single day are thoughts you have had before. And every day your brain treats those thoughts as new and novel. But most of us are just reliving the same thoughts over and over and over and over and over again. And the only way to change that is to be intentional, is to track, this is what I want to change, this is what I want to do. And most of you know this because you've been having the same fight in a relationship for decades or for months. And you're like, it's the same cycle, the same pattern. That's how our brains work. And so the other things I want to talk to you about in terms of education are, if you're going to start mental health education in your community, it's really important to start small and have clear objectives. This youth mental health crisis is so big that people are like, we want to do mental health. Okay, what specifically do you want to do? Do you want to teach a mental health definition? Do you want to teach mental health literacy? Do you want to teach about coping skills? Using the SMART approach. So is it specific? Is it measurable? How are you going to do these things is really important. This crisis is far too big for you to say you just want to teach about mental health. It has to be something that you are very specific about. It's also really important for you and as many people in the community as you can find to model the behaviors that you want to see. This next slide I'm going to go into is how you can talk about mental health using your own personal story, but it's really important for you to do that. It is important to hear from students and what they want to do and what they want to see and what they want to learn about. So this morning or yesterday, when a student shared that they wanted to learn about how to cope with anxiety, okay, point noted. We're going to talk about anxiety. We're going to talk about the difference between nervousness and anxiety. We're going to do that. That's specific. And then the last piece is, if you can tie mental health education into your community in multiple places, science, English, art, history, stuff like that, it broadens the approach. Sometimes when we just teach mental health in one place, kids think, oh, that's where we talk about mental health, but we don't talk about it anywhere else. If you can have a holistic approach, it's really important to do that. So I do want to talk to you about how you can share your story safely. There are a lot of caring adults in our society today who want to share their personal story, but they don't have guidelines for it. And they end up doing it in a way that actually causes harm instead of helping. So the number one rule is you should choose a story, okay? And this story doesn't have to be negative. It could be positive. Mental health isn't always negative. It can be about yourself or something you saw in your life. The number one rule, though, is you have to choose a story that you have actually processed. When you share aspects of your life with a younger population that you haven't processed, it creates a dynamic where now they think they have to take care of you. And that is a very slippery slope to go down. Every human in the world needs validation. Adults who work with a young population need validation in the work you do, in the changes you see, in the behaviors that you notice. Your validation can't come from your personal story. It has to come from what you're teaching, what you're doing, how you're showing up. So sharing a story that you've processed is really important. And then making sure that the story you're choosing has a relevant point for a lesson. So for example, at my school, when I talk about addiction, I'll share that the two biggest determining factors of addiction are biology and age of first use. Well, 3 of my grandparents were alcoholics, so my biology was pretty strong. And then my age of first use was 12. So I am not sharing my story to be cool or to fit in. I'm sharing it from a place of like, hey, this is how this information actually applies to you. This is what I went through, but it's tied to an actual point in a lesson. And then centering that learning objective instead of myself. So instead of me being like, oh man, my life sucked at 12, I went through all this stuff. Even if you notice in this presentation, I always draw it back to you. My family photo, what's your family doing? I had an external life and an internal life. Are you doing that? So it's not centering me, it's centering the learning objective. And then trying to make that learning objective universal. So it is tied to biology, science, it's tied to brain development, it's tied to something that applies to everybody and not just one person. And then trying to make the story relatable. You're not walking uphill in the snow both ways to school. You're actually trying to relate to what they're going through. Their experience with loss, rejection, change, fear, identity development, all those things that are so critical to development. It's also important to really set boundaries. In my school, the 10th grade wellness class is just healthy relationships. So it's attachment theory, love languages, codependency, all kinds of stuff. And my students always ask questions about my personal life, and I don't answer them because it's not appropriate. You have to have boundaries about what you want to share and don't share, because kids' job is to push boundaries. It's to try and learn more about you. It's to look you up on social media. It's to do all these things. You have to set those boundaries to protect yourself and to protect them. And if you want them to ask questions, decide what questions you want to have asked or answered. You can relate, you can connect, you can do things with your mental health, but these are the guidelines to think about. And so the last thing I'm going to talk to you about really is just sharing your story. I want to share one more part of my personal story that I think is relevant. When I came out of the psychiatric ward in my senior year of high school and went back to high school, all of a sudden everything was different. Before I went to that hospital, I was a cool guy. I was the guy everyone partied with, everyone liked, everyone knew. When I got out of that hospital, all of a sudden everyone just started calling me a psycho and a crazy kid. I lost most of my friends. I had rumors about me throughout all of Nazareth, Pennsylvania, from parents, from families. I was bullied. And so I had a teacher who thought it would be a good idea to bring a psychologist into our classroom to talk about the patients he was treating. And when that psychologist came in, they shared the most extreme examples of mental illness you could imagine. And when they did that, every student in that classroom started laughing, except for me, because I was tired of being laughed at. And so I grabbed my teacher and I took him to the hallway and I said, hey, this isn't funny to me. And he looked down at me in a supportive but a very rural Pennsylvania way. And he said, okay, well, what do you want to do about it? And I looked back up at him and I said, let me speak. Let me tell people what it's like to actually go through this. If they're not going to listen to anyone else, maybe they'll listen to me. And he said, okay. And so 2 weeks later, I stood up in the exact same classroom and I shared my story for the very first time. It did not go as smoothly as this. I stood behind a podium, I shook violently, I sweated through my clothes, but when I finished my presentation, nobody laughed. I learned at age 17 that when you share your story, it opens other people to sharing theirs. What that teacher did next is what changed my entire life. For the next 5 years, he brought me back into that classroom every year to share my story. In the darkest years of my life, he kept bringing me in. And what he did is what most of you do. He looked into the eyes of a kid who hated himself and said, I love you. He looked into the eyes of a kid who didn't believe in himself and said, I believe in you. It is not lost on me that that teacher playing that role in my life eventually led to me becoming a teacher. And every day in my school, I look into the eyes of my students and say, I believe in you and I support you. That's the work. That's what you do. That's what you should take pride in. That is why you are here. That is why in this life that is so difficult, you can be a saving grace in so many ways that you won't even imagine, because we don't know the role that you play and how it plays out in the next decades for the kids that you are working with. A lot of you already have success stories. Hold on to those. But more importantly, all of you in this room have the power to change mental health. You have the power to talk about mental health. You just have to embrace that power. So this morning, I talked to you about a lot of things. I shared with you my personal story, but what I really hope happens after this is at some point in your life, you find a way to share your story. When I stood up in a basement classroom in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, I had no idea that sharing my story would lead me to the life that I have had. All of you in this room have no idea where sharing your story will take you until you tell it. Thank you very much. Oh, thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm giving you a standing ovation back at you. You're the ones doing this work. I don't know what happens next. I think you go on break. Okay, we have a couple minutes for questions. All right. Does anybody have any questions? There are back there. There's a mic up here, but it might take a minute to get up here. All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for coming to speak, and I want to say I'm very inspired by your work.
Thanks.
Thank you. Could you provide an email? I saw your TikTok, which I don't have, but
I don't really either.
you know, like if you have a
Sure.
regular email,
Yeah,
that would be great. I'd love to connect. If you're on LinkedIn, I would love
Sure.
to connect and just find out more about what you do.
Sure.
And your mental health teacher training specifically.
Definitely, yeah. My email is just my first name dot my last name @gmail.com. But you can find more about the Mental Health Teacher Training Institute either by texting my name to this number. Instagram is where I post most of my stuff anyway. But yeah, that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Yep. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you very much for coming and talking with us today and for your time. I know it takes a lot of energy to continue doing that work.
Sure.
My only question is, would you consider using mental health as a verb instead of a noun? And then also thinking about like approaching young men, and what I'm seeing in the work that we're doing with mental health, especially in arts and music, is that we had a lot of young people coming forward that were female identifying, but less of youth that are like LGBTQ plus, and then young men. That vulnerability is like a societal change that I think we're still working on.
Sure.
So what allowed you, I think, to be vulnerable in that maleness, I guess?
I think it was having positive male role models that helped, that kind of touch point. Or, you know, what I see in my school a lot is talking about the young men's mental health crisis openly, and giving young men a chance to share, like, what does masculinity mean? What are the messages they're hearing? What are they going through? I think the young men's mental health crisis in part has a vacuum right now in messaging, and that vacuum is being filled with whatever they seek out. So if they seek out damaging information online, like that's what's going to fill the vacuum. So I think it's really important to think about where is that vacuum and how can we fill it. It does help to see other young males doing and talking about this. And now there are a plethora of them doing it in sports and pretty much name anything. And you see men sharing about their emotions. I think even that American Idol winner on Sunday night was just so powerful. And the story about losing his dad and just crying on stage. You're seeing an 18-year-old male just crying on stage and everyone's clapping and supporting that. So I do think you need examples that can help. I don't think there's a one fix to that though. And I think a lot of times when we're talking to young people, it's more important to engage them in conversation about a topic than it is to kind of tell them what's going on or what to do. In terms of using mental health as a verb, I'm cool with people using mental health any way you want, as long as there's like clear parameters and descriptions of it. So yeah, I think that's good. All right, thank you so much.